Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast, where this week we're talking about an episode that set a new high bar, Andy. We finally have something worse than Colton telling someone to die in a fire on a Survivor episode. Yay!
Still, is it worse than Brandon Hantz? This is the fun stuff we get to talk about tonight.
Oh, God. That's like a Sophie's Choice of terrible.
Yeah. This, I think we just start off right here. It's like, who lied to us more about this season? Was it Jeff Probst and all his promotion, or this Dirty 30 cast themselves? Because it's hard for me to accept that these people, who have been just about as awful to each other as any cast in the history of Survivor, or at least since, season 5? That these are like the greatest, biggest friends, the 18 people that travel together everywhere they go. Like, who's more at fault?
It's gotta be Probst, because the cast, they're not allowed to spoil anything, so it's not like, what can they do? Are they gonna say, hey, just heads up, half of us are fucking horrible human beings, so skip some episodes in there? Like, it's all on Probst. They can't trash their own season. They can't tell you, hey, watch out that so-and-so is not someone you want to listen to or watch this season. So I blame Probst.
Well, no, obviously they can't trash it, but for me, it's like Probst is doing his job. He's selling the turd that, he has delivered. They don't have to pretend like they're all friends. No other cast has ever done that before. Just kind of freaking be, man.
And
promote
if anything,
yourself.
I think, I remember when Cass and Spencer and Tony were getting into it on Twitter during Cagayan, I was like, this is just some long con. I bet they're really friends and, they end up all together or something like that. And no, it wasn't. They actually didn't like each other, but in this case, it's kind of the exact opposite. It's like, oh, look, they're all friends. Nope, they're not actually all friends.
Yeah, and some people will think, well, maybe this is a sign that, once they go off island and cooler heads, that, this was just a con job. If you follow them currently on social media, it's pretty clear that, everybody hasn't shaken hands and made friends at the end of this. Nor necessarily should they. I don't even know at this point if it's that we got our hopes up too much, or even if we came into the season with no expectations. Even if we were like, maybe it's just another downturn after San Juan del Sur, that we would not be happy with what we've been fed so far.
Last season was pretty bad, and I certainly, after seeing the cast, didn't have very high hopes for it. This season, based on seeing the cast, I kind of got my hopes up, because there were at least 4 people, and maybe there was even a few more that I was okay with. But now, of that core 4 group of people, half of them are gone, and the odds are really, really stacked against the remaining half. And the people that are left, you kind of hinted at it earlier, it just reminds me of Thailand.
As we get into this podcast, we're gonna lead off with, the grumbling about what we've been forced to take. But I don't know if all hope is lost just yet, but I do think we have to start considering that, maybe it is. Maybe this is the season that the bad guys win. A couple episodes ago, or when Haley went off, you made the very prescient comment that was almost like a Game of Thrones edit, where it seemed like everything was going to go well for our hero, and then smash! Nope, evil wins. And if that one was, the Mountain versus the Viper, I feel like this week was, Ned Stark. In that, it looks bad for our hero, it still looks bad for our hero, but our understanding of how editing and storytelling works will tell us that they'll find a way out some way, somehow, something.
Spoiler alert.
No, it's all bad. Yeah, I don't care. For one, I was dancing around it. If you haven't watched yet, Game of Thrones, you're never watching. Don't give me this.
Yeah.
It's a pretty popular show, I've heard. There are many ways to get into it. And I do feel like we at least have to accept the possibility, because it looks pretty strong at this moment, that maybe this is a season of sucky people getting their way, and that everything we thought we were reading into the edit was possibly wrong. It was just Survivor trying to make lemonade out of lemons.
I think I even tweeted that I'm just kind of hoping that, Mike and Shireen leave, just so Unfortunately, I'll have to keep watching because we're going to keep podcasting about it. But I can just hope that some sort of terrible communicable disease hits the remaining survivors. Maybe dysentery. Dysentery would be nice.
Yeah, they all pick each other to go on a reward, and then they get that. But, one of or both of Mike and Shireen could still be in the game at that point. But that might be even better. But, yeah, these people suck. I mean, not every single one of them. And in fact, I think, to your point, why you had high hopes for the season, there actually was some very good individual casting decisions, up to and including one or two villain types. It's just the combination of factors, and the combination that they probably went with too many, assholes, and then it just kind of spreads to maybe some people that could have gone either way. I don't mean necessarily they could have been cool, but they could have been, just fine. The sort of people that will just go the way that the crowd moves. Well, they've gone the way of the asshole because there's so many of them. And it just shows just how hard casting is. Because, I think they nailed it with Joe. They nailed it with Jen. They nailed it with Mike. I would say they nailed it with Rodney.
They got what they were looking for from Rodney. If anything, they got more than what they were looking for, I think, with Rodney.
Yeah, we will have another begrudging praise for Rodney segment this episode. But it's coalesced in just a deeply unpleasant viewing experience. And that's coming from people who enjoy this game of Survivor.
Well, it's devastating that, you like this show, you look forward to it every week, and then it comes on and you have an episode like that, and you just think, why did I just spend an hour of my life watching that? It's like a terribly depressing episode of any other TV show. You're like, oh man, that might have even been good TV, but I just don't feel happy after watching it. I'm like, why am I watching this if I don't enjoy it?
Yeah. And here's the thing, most of the other television I watch
exactly,
is more
but you
like
expect
this,
it, though.
It's the golden age of television, anti-hero stuff. Yeah, I know the people on Mad Men are terrible. I know that, no good deed will go unpunished in Game of Thrones. I know when I watch Louis that I'll be cringing the whole time. I know that good things are not going to happen to the cast on Shameless. I watch plenty of good TV. Survivor isn't necessarily that. And I'm not the kind of Survivor fan that latches on to the Joe, to the Rupert, to whomever. That's a good old person doing honorable things. I like gameplay. I like backstabbing. But I don't like people just launching personal attacks at each other, going to really ugly places, and then succeeding as a result. And if last night was the only time that this has happened this season, it's an outlier, and we're going to discuss some of the reasons why that could come up. Without, forgiving it necessarily, as some people seem to want to do. But this was just the newest one and the worst one. We had Dan talking about slapping women around a few episodes ago. We had Rodney going off on Lindsay, before the merge. As much as you talk about this is like a collection of assholes that have coalesced into this, coalition of hate, this is still a season that got rid of Joaquin pre-merge. There's been a lot of suckiness to go around.
Yeah, but specifically last night, it was just, you could maybe explain away some of the earlier stuff with, that's just an editing thing. They just took one of Dan's comments out of context, or, they made Rodney look really bad with that. You can't explain away what Will did based on an edit. Believe me, I've seen a couple people attempt it today, and bravo to them for attempting that. But they didn't put words into his mouth. He spoke all of those words, and then doubled down on them later on, as if it wasn't bad enough.
And seems to continue to stand by it to this
the fact that he said those words to this day. And the worst part for me, the thing is, in the beginning, when he's been accused, and he's all offended, and he proves himself correct, that's it. You won. You did it. You showed that they were terrible for doubting you. Ha! In their face. You got him. Good on you, Will. Stop right there. But Will doesn't stop right there. Will keeps going. And it's not enough to just, throw it in their face and insult them a little. Like, Will has to twist the knife far beyond what's necessary, and no one says anything. If anything, Rodney actually piles on with Will on Shireen until Mike finally shows up and is like, just leave. You don't have to tolerate this crap. And it's just terrible and painful to watch.
Yeah, and you were saying them because he was talking about the people that were saying it. But there was no them. Will was doing the classic bully behavior of, I'm going to find the weak person and make myself strong by picking on them. He wasn't going to pull this with Mike. He wasn't going to pull it with Jen. He might have, put it out there that, rebuked their accusation, as you said. Because at the start, he had the right to be offended. I'm not taking that away from him. That's not important by the end of what he did. He was just laying on to Shireen because she is clearly the weakest player socially in the game, and especially amongst the group of people that were sitting around there. And it's just like, finally me, Will, who's been freaking worthless. Here's the thing. If you're one of those people that's backing up Will, why? This guy means nothing in this game.
Yeah,
you're like, I'm on Team Will?
So far is limply sliding down a slide in a challenge. That's it. That's what you're rooting for? That makes you Team Will?
Yeah. Yeah, the other things that he had was basically sucking at every other challenge, but trying to blame somebody else. That was Will pre-merge. Oh man, Nina really let us down on that one. It's like, you freaking kidding me? You almost died out there. So yeah, big ups for supporting the most worthless player on a tribe full of worthless players. But yeah, no, he was just going off on somebody in personal ways. And in Survivor, it happens a lot amongst fans, not so much the kind of fans that we interact with, more amongst the commons, but that they get really wrapped up in the morality play of it, and that, this person was a villain, this person was a hero, it was so evil when so-and-so did this, and more often than not, they're talking about game mechanics. It was awful when he stabbed his alliances in the back, when he lied to them, when, Dodd voted out the person that rescued her teeth or whatever. And you and I rightly scoff at that every time. There's no place for that in Survivor. That's not morality. This is people signing up for a game that has a long history of showing what needs to be done or needs to be said. And then much in the same way that bluffing in poker does not make you a liar. It makes you a player of a game with agreed upon rules and strategies. What Will did, that's your morality. That's taking stuff outside of the game, saying nobody freaking loves you, and bringing it in. That's the immoral stuff, Mr. Christian man.
Well, and not only that, it's also terrible fucking gameplay.
That's the other thing that defends me deeply. And it's just it's the two are tied together. It's like, yeah, it's bad to just go off and yell at somebody. That's a bad human thing to do. But more so, it's stupid. This person, if everything you think is going to go right, is going to be one of the people that determines whether you get a reward, get the ultimate reward. And as we'll get to a little later, whether you're going to get an immediate reward. And it's just so stupid. But yeah, if people were wondering if there's going to kind of be a debate back and forth of, pro and con of what Will did, this isn't the podcast for you.
No.
I'm not taking the anti-side.
I don't think anyone's willing to play devil's advocate on this one. Even with the anonymity of the internet behind them, very few people are willing to do that. I actually, I've
seen a couple.
I posted a little glimpse of it, but if you look at the, responses to Will's Twitter, it is just a, page after page after page of relentless hate. It's pretty brutal, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that dude's gonna have to do another, song at a fucking gas station to get his fame levels back.
And again, we already said, he won the argument. There's no need to go further. There are so many times along the way where Will could have just fixed it. You know what? If that argument ends next day, next few hours, whatever, he goes up to her and says, man, you know what? I'm sorry. I lost it back there. I don't know what was wrong with me. That was totally out of line. I apologize. Okay. I mean, he still said what he said, but at least he was enough. At least he manned up and apologized for it. Instead, we get to Tribal Council, which Will is very excited to go to.
Because it's the first time has anybody had anything to say to him other
Yes,
than
and Will is very
Will's still
excited to talk and tell his side of the story. So when Shireen lays out the exact reasons that all of the things that he said upset her, does Will say, "Ooh, I didn't realize that, and maybe I crossed the line. Maybe, even though I was justified in being hurt by what you said, maybe I struck back a little too hard." No. That. Will is like, "Hey, I didn't go far enough." Doubles down on it. "No, you are the worst, and everything you're saying is totally true. Yes, you don't have a soul. Yes, no one loves you. Blah, blah, blah." Like, damn. We'll get to it in a minute, but I am so glad that she got at least some small measure of revenge against him.
Ultimately, I mean, it was the only thing really that you'd pull out of last night's episode. There's some people like, "Oh, it was still a great episode of television." It's like, yeah, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln,
Right.
How was the play? But ultimately, at the end, Will still isn't very interesting, and he never was, and he never will be. So more interesting for me is, taking a broader look at this. And what this is about, what this might say about Survivor. And in this discussion, I want to make clear that in no way am I making excuses or condoning whatever Will said. Just so everything's clear, my position there is Will and the horse he rode in on, and then subsequently fell off of. But the thing I was struck by after watching all of that, which was, unpleasantness, and not just Will's attack, but everybody who stood silently by watching, maybe even smirking about it. The other things that we've seen this season was it just kind of a stark reminder that this show that we really like, this game that we really like, is at its very core not very nice.
No. I think if anything, it's actually gotten a whole lot better. We brought it up last week, but I just rewatched Pearl Islands again, and there's such a stark contrast there. People are a lot more accepting now of the fact that this is just a game. I mean, it's been around for 15 years. I think it's built enough of there's enough knowledge amongst the players that, this is a game. If you lose, you lose. It's just like any other game. They don't get all butthurt like they used to about betrayals and stuff like that. There's people now that will actively campaign for the people that voted them out. Like, it's a different game than it was then. So I don't think that it's necessarily that the game isn't very nice any more than like playing Sorry and, swapping pieces with somebody is not very nice of a game.
Yeah, but there's just some differences about Survivor than basically any other reality show. The very first of which is this is a game where the competitors decide to eliminate each other one by one. They share that with Big Brother, but everything else, it's an outside source doing the elimination. So that to stay in the game, in most other games or reality, you just need to be better at it than other people in a demonstrable way. I don't know. Smile with your eyes while on American's Next Top Model or whatever. And then, on top of that, you're put through depredation, right? No food, no sleep. And to your point, most people handle this much better than Will did, which is why we should not be excusing it. Yes, I'm sure he was hungry. I'm sure his feelings were hurt. You don't see everybody going to that place.
And just to dispute that just a little bit, Will is hungry after finding a case full of rations. I think he was just sitting there eating them in the scene before. Will's not starving. And there's been, like you said, there's 30 seasons at this point. It's not like this is a very common behavior.
Oh no, this is definitely an outlier. I don't mean to use this as a condemnation of Survivor, but it just did strike me as maybe this is just gonna happen sometimes because of the nature of the game. Because it's people eliminating each other in a game for $1 million. And they cast a certain kind of person, right? They're not casting too many level-headed, even keeled types, because then you get.
That's what I was going to make the point, is that Tyler's one of those, and he's terrible.
Yeah, it feels surprising when something like last night happens, because we do really enjoy this show. We're giving up parts of our night. You're barely going to sleep tonight, before you have to go to work tomorrow. We have people that listen to our podcast and like 3 others. So look, we like this game, but I just wonder if, this is almost just a side effect that's going to happen every 5 to 10 years or so, especially when you get a certain mix of people. And you brought up this point, and I think it kind of, it goes hand in hand, is that, we're 30 seasons in, 15 years. People understand that's a game, and they don't take it as personally as they used to, not even close. But maybe that's part of the problem of what was happening last night, is for so many people that this is such a game that they just lose track on being a human being every once in a while. As bad as it was to watch everybody but Mike sit there and do nothing, it's kind of what the game forces on people.
Yeah, we've actually talked about that before, how you have these social pressures in the game to allow terrible things to happen. And I think that definitely was what occurred last night. So again, bravo to Mike for overcoming that social pressure and being the one to stand up and say like, okay, this is too far. You're in the wrong. Shireen, leave. But I also want to point out that last season we had John Rocker and never got anything as bad as this.
Again, this is an outlier this extreme, but to use your John Rocker point, people were going after him, but none of his allies rallied around him, in the moment. At least I believe they voted him out that night, but for other reasons. And it's why I hesitate to give Mike too much credit, although I'm gonna give him some, cause Team Mike, win this thing, please. It's easy for him to be the one to step in and try to shame people, because those people are already against him and he knows it. He loses nothing, socially by doing so. But if somebody like Sierra was to step in, and somebody like Sierra is never gonna step in, it could cost her, and that's part of what I was getting at, that, ugliness could happen in a game of Survivor because there's something a little inherently somewhat ugly, and it's hopefully the show doesn't go there. The show doesn't get dominated by people that are willing to go there, but you have some of the great game players who recognize that if people are fighting, that's good for me. I'm not going to stop a fight. Rob Cesarino believed that in Amazon. I believe, Tony was probably cool if, Trish and Lindsay are fighting, And did this one go to a place where it goes beyond gameplay? Yeah, absolutely. But when you're there, I don't know. It's lovely to sit there and pat ourselves on the back. It's I would have done something, but I don't know if I would have if these people were my allies. Especially, and here's the final point, making allies with people that suck is not a bad strategy in Survivor.
Yeah, again, that's one of the things I was saying, is there are just strong social and game pressures in this game that will prevent you from doing the right thing.
Yeah, but I wonder if this season, because there are, as part of the pregame hype, and I think some of it's lived up, there's so many gamers, there's so many people who love the game or about the game, this about the game, that they're sitting there, they're not even thinking about the emotional side of Survivor that much, even though they seem to be getting even more emotional. It's just oh, this is good for the game, and I'm going to attack this person out of the game, and I'm going to do this move because it'll help my game, and none of them are stopping and thinking maybe I shouldn't be messing with people like this, in a way that past seasons with maybe more of a mix between gamers and just people and characters might have somebody like Dawn that's going to smooth things over with people and then stab them in the back. Or actually who on this season that's left is the nurturer?
I don't know, but do you always need a nurturer? I'm trying to think of previous seasons.
Previously I wouldn't have said yes, but now I'm thinking maybe. Maybe part of the awfulness is that all people whatever, it's just a game, and I can be as gross as I want to be because it's just a game.
Yeah, but I don't think it was, Will's competitive nature that caused him to go full asshole there.
But divorces from Will, again, 2 weeks ago it was Dan. Before that it was Rodney.
Yeah, but...
when Rodney's going after Lindsay, Mike doesn't step in then.
But again... Is that a competitive nature, this is a game type of thing, or is that his personality?
Probably a little bit of both, but the fact that it's all is fair in love and war type deal, just almost absolves you of any kind of guilt. It's just whatever, it's just a game. and I'm just going to vote you guys out anyway. I don't know if there's an answer to this. It was a thought that people always want everybody's out there to play, everybody has a game, but like maybe this is a negative undercurrent to what happens with that, especially if people that are gamers and also, crappy people happen to take control.
As has happened this season.
As has happened. And, one more person to talk about a gamer is the person that, we thought actually, came out looking alright as a person last episode. It was Mike. I do not believe Mike had a very good night last night. And I think a lot of that is because he kept thinking more about strategy than managing relationships.
Yeah, there was a couple slip-ups in this one. Although, in his defense, we start the episode off by him somehow overhearing the conversation that basically says, yeah, we're going after Mike. This is the final four right here. So he knows it's coming and probably realizes there's little he can do to fix that situation. I do wonder why he didn't, or if he didn't, tell Sierra or Dan about this whole Axis of Evil alliance that was forming against him prior to the auction. Because if he did, or even if he didn't, if Dan and Sierra feel safe sticking with that group of 6, who else do they think that they're aligned with in that foursome? Is it Rodney?
I'm pretty sure he did in that he announced it in front of everybody, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying he should have done it prior to that moment.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's kind of my point. Strategically, he's thinking, okay, this is a thing, I gotta do it, and I'll put them on the spot and see if they can screw up. Which, we can argue whether that's a good strategy or not. Some would say that you don't, if you have information about somebody, you don't let them know that you have that information. But more that I think it was a bad social play. He wasn't just blindsiding those 4 awful people, he was blindsiding his 2 allies as well. Whether he pulled them aside or not, we don't know. All we can really go with was what we saw. And what we saw is him announcing it to everybody, and Rodney very easily deflecting it. That's that's strike one of Mike thinking about his strategy in his game more than managing the relationships that he has. The next strike, of course, happens at the auction, and we'll talk about that on deeper levels.
Yeah, and I think that
actually, let's talk about it right now.
I was going to say, I think the thing at the auction is actually what allowed Rodney to so easily swat away Mike when Mike brought up Rodney.
Yeah, well, I think Mike, if the chronology of what we presented is to be trusted, Mike had presented it before the auction because that's why he was so threatened and all of that. So Rodney swatted away at first. Maybe he didn't completely do it, and then the auction solidified it, and then his actions after the auction even more so. So at the auction, Mike tries to not buy the family thing. What did you think of that?
Risky, but I mean, it was ballsy and a great strategic move, but terrible social move. And really, if you're going to take that risk, you have to follow through. You can't just back off. The damage is already done. Follow through. And I actually think if Probst had said to Carolyn, no, you can't return your letter.
Which I'm 100% sure he would.
Oh, he would have. He would have told her no, she couldn't, because you don't want to set the precedent that you can return items. So if he had said right away, no, sorry, you're not getting your letter back, you paid for it, or giving your letter back, you paid for it, I think maybe then Mike sticks with the plan. I don't know if he backs out and gives in and buys the letter or not.
But judging from Jen's exit interview, I mean, she wasn't paying that much attention because she was, really drunk and she doesn't like these people. Is that it was this whole confusion and people were going back and forth and all of that, and Probst had not yet said anything. So, and Mike just basically is screw it. I'll just do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if Probst hadn't delayed for so long at that point, if Carolyn came to give him back the letter and he was like, nope, sorry, right then, I think maybe Mike just says, yeah, I'm going with this plan. Screw it.
Basically, I agree. It was, and that's further my point. Strategically, it's okay, he's holding out. He needs that advantage. Somebody else decides that they're not going for it, and then he takes it. I mean, Tony would never in a million years have agreed to take the letter. But Mike's not Tony. And you have to look at the tears in your ally Dan's eyes and just say, I can't do this to my ally. No matter how much you need an advantage, more than advantage, you need allies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just a bad social play, regardless of what we think about Dan. Dan, until that point, was useful to Mike. So yeah, you could tell that the social pressures were pointing that he had to agree to the deal, and he had to take it. But yeah, to your point, once he tried that move, flipping it back and just buying the clue, bought him nothing. The damage was already done. At that point, you might as well, he could have used an extra vote last night. So that was the next one, and then, they go back to camp, and it's, again, not a bad idea to, once again, apologize and put it out there. It's like, I know I'm on the block, because I don't feel like those four were doing that good a job at dissuading the idea that, we're together.
Mm-hmm.
But, bad social engineering again. It was clear. Nobody wants to hear it right now, Mike. Let the moment breathe. And it's just like, I wonder if, like, this is symptomatic of these people are more focused on the game and strategy than the people. And Survivor is more about the people than underneath those other things.
Yeah. I think also those four are particularly terrible people. Actually, Tyler's not necessarily a terrible person. He's just bland.
Yeah, like, I mean, he was one of those I was talking about. It's like, he could have gone either way. If this was a season of awesome people, then he would have fit in with them, and again, he would have been bland, but we wouldn't have hated him. He'd just been like, hey, Tyler. So Tyler is instructive because when you get a group of people, this awful, playing the social game might look like being Tyler. That's the one, caveat I will give to, the people that have been kind of cool, that we like. To Mike, to Shireen, whatever. It's like, maybe it's near impossible to play socially with a bunch of social rejects. Then what you have to do is just kind of sit back and let them, be crazy and all of that, to the detriment of not only your own character. I don't mean character as in, I'm an honorable person, but like character as a TV show person, but also your game. Because I'm sure that's what Sierra is doing too, and you could sit there and say that it makes sense. Why would you want to go to the end with Mike when you can go to the end with Rodney? But Sierra and Tyler are not winning because it doesn't matter. At a certain point, you still need to be able to say, what did you do here?
Yeah, I wonder though, because you just brought up the fact that, you're going to the end with all these terrible, or you're playing a social game with all these terrible people. Are we going to get a Monica Culpepper Final Tribal where someone's just yelling, haven't you all ever met a nice person?
I almost hope so.
That would be great.
Yeah, I almost miss Monica at this point. Alright, so getting back to the auction, we briefly discussed, what Mike did wrong and what he did wrong again. But in the auction in general, in Cagayan, we saw it where 3 people were just not going to bid on anything. They were waiting for the advantage, which, what we had always been said. Don't waste your money on the food. Try to get the advantage. And we thought after they did that and after people were loading up on food for like $60 here or there, we're like, did they just break the auction? Clearly, Survivor was cognizant of that and threw in different twists to try to liven it up. Did they succeed?
I don't know why they didn't just take, and I probably suggested this twist back in Cagayan. It's the easiest possible fix. Just hide the advantage. That's it. Just the same way they hid Will's note. Hide it. And then as soon as someone wins it on one of those mystery items, that's it. That's all it took. One season of people seeing that happen, and that would be the last time they'd ever have people holding back their money.
Yeah, well, I think this season though, they were like, fine. Hold back your money. We're going to mess with you. Like Jeff put it out there in the open, after, I'm not sure if he just guessed or maybe Shireen brought it up or something. Yeah, after Shireen bought the chicken and waffles, he's like, I'm not holding out for an advantage. And that, obviously the family letter thing right before was like, let's test your resolve. And I think even the Will thing was like, oh, there's something else out there. They could have even maybe thrown in one other thing like, clue to where the idol is no longer hidden. But, it's like, so I think, I saw them working. There was some drama and interest, but it still became this, the people that are there to play, the really strategic ones, comes down to a rock draw. And, you for the white rock, by the way, Survivor.
A can of spray paint is like $3. Would it kill you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
I will say that I think, there's been rumors that, in, Marquesas, they maybe could feel the one that's actually painted. And maybe with, the white and black, they're made that way. They're not painted, so maybe, but I'm guessing no, they just don't care about us. Which, actually, okay. That's 100% sure. They don't care about us. Did they revitalize the auction last night, or is it still the same problem we were facing that, it's like, hey, we'll sit around watching people until they get to draw rocks?
I mean, if anything, they, other than the slight twist for Will, I mean, Shireen basically rigged everybody getting the letters for $20. I think it might have gone.
That one actually I was a little surprised about. Yeah. I'm not surprised you were quick to give her credit for every single move she made. It was pretty actually laughable when I looked at your timeline on Twitter, and it's just like, what? She's not bidding? And then all of a sudden, haha, of course she's not bidding. She's a genius. Oh, look at that. She mind tricked Probst. It's like no matter what she does.
No. And to be clear, I'm not saying she was a genius for not going for the advantage. I think she should have. I was stunned when she actually bid on food, although chicken and waffles might break me down too, but I really think that was a mistake and she should have gone for it. I understand her reasoning in that, at this point, she's not a challenge threat. She doesn't have an idol. Why put a target on her back when there's not one? But at the same time, she needs it.
But yeah, Probst has done that before, and he was probably ready to do it again. I just want, when she said it out loud, it's like, this would be such a classic Probst moment to be like, yeah, in the past I've totally done that, but not today. Cause doesn't he always like to, as soon as you presume to know what the show is gonna do to you, he's just like, oh, I never said we were merging or anything like that, so.
And I think he might have done something like that. I think he just actually likes Shireen and is amused by her. And so he's like, yeah, sounds good. $20. Who's in?
Yeah, and so, actually another quick question, since you brought it up. If everybody's holding out for an advantage, then maybe that's no longer an advantage. It certainly wasn't for Carolyn and Mike. They walked away with squat, other than the letters. So maybe at that point, the next advantage is eating the best food. Because that's something tangible. Shireen got to walk away with food, which is not meaningless in the game of Survivor. Whereas, Mike and Carolyn got...
And Tyler got nothing. Tyler not only held back his money, he didn't even bid on the advantage because he was thinking there might be something after it. And so he got absolutely nothing. He didn't even get a chance at something.
I'm sure he got something. They don't.
No, he left the auction with his letter and $480.
Honestly, I don't pay enough attention to that.
I don't blame you. I only know because CBS's crack social media team tweeted it out.
That's pretty awesome, actually, now that I know that. That's Tyler's gameplay in a nutshell. I'm gonna sit back and do nothing and wait for everything to come to me. And 20% of the fans out there will call me the best player of the game as a result.
That's right. And bang, gavel done, auction over.
Tyler is the player that gets to stay at the poker table for 3 hours because he folds every freaking hand. I'm going to skip ahead in our list here because I clearly had it misordered. So, at the auction, big advantage. We finally find out what the big twist that Jeff Probst promised us this season. The winner gets an extra vote. How do you feel about this?
Generally, I'm in favor of giving twists or gimmicks a chance. I mean, there was, even when they announced Redemption Island, I was like, you know what, it doesn't sound like a good idea, but sure, whatever, we'll see how it plays out. With this, I think it actually does sound like a good idea, and I think I know the reasoning behind it too. I think we've gotten so used to the big moves happening at odd numbers, just because mathematically it makes sense to swing on those on those numbers. But now, if you have an extra vote, suddenly when there are 6 people left or 8 people left, it gets a lot more interesting. You can make big moves then when nobody is expecting it, and I think that's what they're intending to happen here.
Oh, that's possible. I hadn't considered that. I figured it was even simpler than that, and that idols aren't working as much anymore. Players have figured out what to do about idols, and we've seen. The only time that an idol worked this season was when they couldn't do the thing that you do, which is split votes. So, Yeah, let's try something else. I'm like you, and I think you and I are unique in this sense. That is like, reserve judgment and see how it plays out. But I will confess, when I first hear it's like, ooh, that seems like a big advantage. Like that's my first initial reaction, like, oh, they're changing Survivor again. But then I quickly go, okay, well, they're changing Survivor again because I recognize that changing Survivor is one of the strengths of it and why it's been successful. I know this as a former Amazing Race watcher when it's like, oh, okay, every episode they race and then they stop racing. We need to change the repetition and you need to stay ahead of the players because once they find a successful strategy, there's no point in not doing it. And then people are like, oh, an extra vote, that's such a big advantage. Well, for one, it is an advantage. That's why they call it an advantage. In order for an advantage to be an advantage, it has to be advantageous. I think people are so afraid of like, oh my god, they gave that guy a thing that nobody else has. That's the whole freaking point.
Yes.
And it's like, how could you have a problem with this, but be cool with idols? And maybe some of these people, they're not. They're still longing for the days of no idols. This is one more vote. An idol could negate every single vote but your own. If you play an idol at the right time, you basically have 9 votes. You have 10 votes. You have the only vote that counts. In this, there are many situations in Survivor that you could have 5 extra votes and it wouldn't matter, much less 1. It certainly would have helped last night.
Yeah, you have to let Survivor innovate. That's how it's become the show that it is. So, like we were saying, just give it a chance. I actually think it's going to be a decent twist, so I'm willing to give it the chance.
Yeah, and as much as annoying as it was last season when Probst was dismissing any criticism of the Tyler Perry idol, was like, oh, people would have loved it if Spencer got it, which was missing the point. People hated it before they even knew who was getting it. Last night would have been saved if Mike would have won that rock draw, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have come in real handy then.
Yeah, we would be celebrating. Even people would be like, I don't really like it, but yay! The people that suck less won. Because that's all they would have needed. Alright, so, coming to the surprising weekly segment here on the Survivor Purple Rock podcast, begrudging praise for Rodney.
We really need theme songs for this.
We do. Way to go, Rodney, I guess.
Nope.
Nope, that ain't it. Yeah, as bad as it was an episode for Mike, as we talked about, once again, Rodney shows that he is kind of, if not controlling the game, getting his way. He out-dueled Mike, didn't he?
Yeah. First of all, screw Rodney for joining in with Will and dumping on Shireen, because he's a terrible human being. But there are terrible human beings who somehow succeed strategically. We've seen it happen before. And I think what was weird is he had the plan, okay, now we gotta turn on Mike, let's do it right now. And boring, risk-averse Tyler, the blob of bland that he is, was like, okay, great idea, let's put a pin in that and come back to it later. Like, no, now's probably the time to strike, because if you're waiting to strike, you're going to get got first.
I almost want to know what people see in Tyler at this point. Like, do you cheer for toast? Is that what you do?
Unbuttered toast.
I truly wish he had said, let's put a pin in it. He actually said, let's pause, but it's just so clearly a time, like, that's him. Oh, but just put a pin in that. We'll just worry about that when the time comes.
Survivor Pinterest.
But yeah, I mean, because Rodney's spot should have been completely blown up. It's not like he handled it with grace. This is why, I 0%ed him. It's like, there's gonna come a time when he blows up at the wrong point and totally, submarines his game. Apparently not! I mean, look, there's still time. There is still time, knock on wood. But it's like, he not only had his 4, which was a real thing, it wasn't just people that were saying, yeah, Rodney, like, those 4 were tight. Dan and Sierra went to them and not stayed with Mike. They went to the guy they could not stand, the one they've said bad things about. And a thought I had when I was watching is like, Rodney is kind of, very only kind of, Tony-esque.
No.
Let me finish the thought. Tony is amazing, Rodney is not. Let's go there. Like he's like, I don't know, diseased homeless man's Tony, but in the sense that people think of him as this spazzy, player that it almost allows them to underestimate him and succeed while he's doing it. I think a lot of what was happening in Cagayan is like people let Tony be out in front and do this because like, that's just Tony. Don't worry. We'll get him later. He's not going to win, whatever. And all of a sudden they were all voted out. And it seems kind of like that's what's happening with Rodney, is that people are kind of like, yeah, sure, yeah, Rodney, okay, fine. We'll really control it. But none of those people are controlling it. I give Rodney the best chance out of those 6 people to win Survivor right now. And that's sad.
Out of those 6, I think you're actually right.
Yeah, and probably each and every one of them thinks, yeah, we'll let Rodney think that he's in charge. But at a certain point, if you kind of let somebody be in charge long enough, he is in charge. And I think we've seen that unless you're aggressively awful, which normally would apply to Rodney, but this season it kind of even doesn't.
Yep.
You'll be rewarded for that at the end. People don't want to vote for Mick, so they'll vote for Natalie if they have to,
Well, I mean, like you said, unless you're aggressively awful, it just so happens that there are a lot of people who are aggressively awful that Rodney can go up against.
Yeah. So it's like not even that, like, and that's, one of the many, many ways where he differs from Tony, and that Tony actually wasn't aggressively awful.
No.
He had a couple blow-ups, but he wasn't. People actually liked him. To the point where, Woo Submarines is game to pick him. But, I don't even know where I'm going. Yeah, Rodney is not that bad. He in this group of people.
Yeah, he's certainly found his niche.
Yeah, like, I'd vote for him if it was him and Dan and Will.
I would set the parchment on fire instead.
Like, if this season goes as frustrating as there seems like it's going. And look, I'm not willing to give up on Mike. Last week I said he was the favorite to win the game. I still kind of believe that. I just don't have it at 80% anymore. I'll be like, frick it. Let's just make this the season of Rodney. Like, I could stomach that more than any of those other 5 people.
And then never watch it again?
No, we'll be back. It's the nice thing about Survivor is they can always renew. I don't know, maybe they bring some people back. So, instead of talking about people we dislike, let's talk about somebody we don't. Normally I would start this segment by, this thing happened on the show. Was it the right move or not? I'm not doing it this time. It was awesome when Shireen put up her hand, right?
Damn right it was. And it was, we talked earlier, it's a social game. That's probably bad social gameplay. If her goal was ever to win Will back over as a juror and, she might need him later on for an alliance, blah, blah, blah. Bad social gameplay. But from a justice perspective, fantastic A+. Applause from me, Shireen, because she's screwed, essentially. And especially, why not take a little small measure of revenge against Will? And especially with his complete BS offer to set out of a challenge that he's going to lose anyway and get rewarded for it. Like, no, shoot that down. Don't let that happen.
Yeah, I'll say the only thing I didn't like about it is that she went back to the integrity of the game thing, and I think it was because she was trying to diffuse some of the emotional reaction. Do it, for one, and I'll talk about a bit, the social thing. But yeah, I'm all in favor of her putting up her hand, but then she's just been like, this is why you don't treat people the way you did, Will. Like, I don't even talk about the game. It's just like, yeah, you made your bed lie in it, or if you really want to get deep, it's like, you know what, Will? Give something up of value. To your point, it's like, you gave up nothing, Will. You were never going to win. You were going to be the worst person at this anyway. Or me. How about you give up your vote tonight? That's something. But you giving up participating in a challenge that you'll suck at because you suck at all of them is nothing. That's less than $20 at an auction.
You know what she should have said is, she should have raised her hand and said, yeah, I don't want him to have his letter from home because I have no soul. And then just glared at him the whole time. Would have been even more delicious.
Yeah, stuff like that would have only made it more awesome for us. But socially, in general, yeah, that's not a way to win people over. But she's never winning that guy over.
Nope.
She's not ever winning his allies over. That was a no-lose situation from that perspective, and I think that's important to think about Survivor in this times. I think so many people always like, oh, what you can do to win, so you can win. Sometimes victory is not a full option for everybody. Sometimes the game goes to a certain point where victory is not an option. I'm not quite saying that that's necessarily true of Shireen in this case, but victory over with these people in that way, that's off the table. They're never going to be pro Shireen. So then find another form of victory. Yeah, that's why it would always frustrate me when people are like, why isn't Christina Shaw doing more? It's like, there's nothing Christina Shaw could do to ever win this game.
Yeah.
She's been completely ostracized and she's not that good. So, 4th place or whatever she finished, that was actually pretty good for somebody who was told to go jump in a fire around like 10th place.
Right.
Cochran was never going to win South Pacific. He probably could have gotten to the end, like to the final 3, if he would have stuck by those awful people. I believe that was probably on the table because they knew they were going to beat him.
Yes.
But that measure of self-respect is saying, you know what, no, I'm tired of eating your shit. That's a small victory. And it turned into a larger one when it became a character that he could, if he becomes the GOAT that's dragged to the final 3, he never gets brought back. So there's ways of finding victory in situations where traditional victory isn't there, and I believe this is the case. So yeah, I am not, the Shireen, everything Shireen does is awesome, part of this podcast.
That would be me.
I thought that was awesome. So this isn't just your bias. It was awesome. And was it like, turning the other cheek and being the other person? Of course not. But there comes a point in time when being the bigger person just means eat everybody's shit and do nothing about it.
Yeah, and there's only so far that you can let yourself sink or let other people beat you down. At a certain point, you stand up for yourself, and I mean, I don't know that any of them are going to give her respect and credit for that. I'm sure Will won't, but you have to. Like, her game's already submarined anyway. Like, no, don't let them keep beating you down.
Yeah, no. This is how bullies get away with it.
Yep.
And, there needs to be consequences, and this was the immediate consequence, as I was saying before. You could say, the consequence will be in the front of the jury. I don't know if Will's getting to the finals. And this is an immediate one. You were that way. And guess what? What goes around comes around, Will. This is why you don't do that. To our point earlier, not only is it terrible human being behavior, it's terrible gameplay behavior.
Hey, speaking of terrible gameplay, let's talk about Dan and Sierra. Because
let's talk about
they had an opportunity to stick with Mike. Mike had 2 other votes. They would have had 5 against 4. But they stayed with that group of 6. You think that's the right call?
This is a tough one because there's no part of me that wants it to be the right call. There's no part of me who wanted it to happen. And also, like, what would be the right call for Sierra at this point? Like, she's just a non-presence. Yeah, and so I could totally see why in her mind, teaming with awful people is better than teaming with awesome people. It's true. It's not gonna help her, but it's true. But for Dan, and Mike has been his basically one ally throughout the entire game, and he has a way of flipping it without having to bring Sierra, without even having to use his newly found advantage. 1 vote was all it took because of the vote split. One thing I thought of is it in Dan's best interest to keep Jen?
I think it's in Dan's best interest to not move to the bottom of a 6-person alliance that's clearly he doesn't seem to have much of an in with.
Yeah, normally I would agree with that, and I also think that's probably what's more happening. I don't want to, have this session too much be about Dan, because it seems more like he's just like, flippers never win, and this is my 6, and Mike is no longer the 7, so it's 6. But just like, if I were Dan and thus not horrible, you don't need Jen to take control of this game later. You can thin out Mike's other potential allies to ensure that you're one of the top ones and still get rid of her at this point because you have that advantage.
Yeah, but at the same time,
because he can have Jen's vote next time, it just be his vote twice.
The better idea here is go ahead and start breaking up that group of 4, because really all it's going to take is probably 1 shot, take one of them out, and then it splinters, especially if it's Carolyn or Tyler that you go after. Then it's just going to fall apart, and then you can use each of those pieces later on for your own game.
Yeah, and like that's the other thing. It's like they weren't asking him to vote out Rodney. If you're still hung up on this blue collar thing and all of that, it's like, well, what were Carolyn and Tyler to you? But I think, yeah, so, was it the right move? Well, I'm never gonna say anything that Dan does is the right move. But I could say, I could make the argument, if he was thinking this way, and I don't think he was, that I don't want to be in alliance with Jen, Shireen, and Mike. It seems to be this kind of bigger deal. Let's take out one more of them so that I never surrender my power. Okay. If he actually had a plan to next time take out one of those other people. Because there's time. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think for one, it was just an emotional thing that, Mike was not going to let me have my letter to my wife. Which isn't exactly true. You just had to sacrifice your shot at the advantage.
Right.
You didn't need that advantage, Dan. Like, where's your loyalty to your alliance mate? Nobody's coming after you. In one of Jen's bonus scenes, it was great when she was talking about what happened at the auction. He's like, and the best thing is that Dan won the advantage. Because there's no advantage that Dan's gonna be able to do anything with. He's gonna lose a challenge or a strategy, he's gonna screw it up anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And what kills me about Dan, well, I guess to an extent Sierra's move too, or lack of move, is that this is a post-merge individual game at this point. There's no such thing as an alliance of 6. Shireen is right. I mean, there's barely even an alliance of 4. Even within that alliance, there are sub-alliances. So, there's not a firm 6 at all. I think it's pretty clear who the top 4 in that 6 would be. So, I don't get why, actually, I guess I do get why, because Dan explained it earlier. Superfans just apparently don't understand basic math.
Yeah, although to the point about individual game, I think overriding almost all of this and why it was so easy for them to flip on Mike, despite the fact that Rodney wasn't that convincing, is once Joe left, Mike was the next person that scared everybody. So that could just be it, that it was like, oh, well, I guess if they're going to vote out Mike, that's not so bad anyway. And to my earlier point that started this whole podcast, maybe that's true, and maybe that's why sometimes Survivor is just gonna suck. Because people, if you get enough crappy people, they realize, hey, we can be crappy together, and our crappiness is not a detriment. Look at Vanuatu.
Yay, this is depressing.
So yeah, that's the nadir. That's how depressing this episode and parts of the season have made us. I was thinking maybe to spin some positivity out of this, let's try to imagine ways that Mike and Shireen could still win, because I feel like a lot of people are just like, this season sucks, I shouldn't even keep watching. Let's put some hope out there. So I was thinking each of us could pick one of the 2 remaining people that we like, and figure out a plausible, path to victory for them. And shock of all shocks, you're gonna go with Shireen.
Hey! What a surprise. I mean, I think either of them are going to have a monstrous uphill climb. But I think at the very least, Shireen is likely going to be able to stick around a little bit longer than Mike, just because A, she's less of a threat, and B, I think she's much more open to just being a vote to people. She'll just say, like, listen, if you need me, I'm a vote. I don't care. I'm in your alliance if you need me. I'm in someone else's if they need me. Who cares? At some point, though, she's going to get to a place where people are going to realize that she would have potentially 4 votes for her in a final tribal council. So something's going to have to happen. Either someone else is going to have to screw up in an attempt coming after her. She might have to have an immunity idol. She might, God forbid, need to win an immunity challenge. Let's hope it's a gross food eating challenge. Something's going to have to happen. But I think for this next week, Mike winning immunity, I don't think will help her, because then I don't think Mike's handing her the immunity, his immunity idol.
And I don't think he should either.
I don't think so either, is what I'm saying. So there has to be something that's going to convince someone else to join with them. And I think it's just really going to have to be that Mike is somehow vulnerable, and maybe they go for a vote split, but then they don't do the second round of votes on Shireen for some reason. It's really hard to get past next week with the Shireen thing.
Yeah, because I'd say the one person that I'm 100% confident is not going home next week is Mike.
Right.
Because you can't blindside him and he has an idol.
Yes.
Yeah, he knows the next time he does not have immunity, he's playing that idol. So
Right.
yeah, that's a tough one.
I mean, the only other thing I can think of is if somehow she points out, oh, actually, I guess in the preview, we get the idea that Tyler finds out that Dan has the advantage of 2 votes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they turn on Dan sooner than Shireen?
Yep.
Sure. And then
I think
after
that's
that,
plausible.
she can make it farther. It's just, as long as she can get past next week, I think she'll have a couple more weeks. But next week's going to be dicey.
Yeah, I think, what she needs is them to turn on each other early and it to become, acrimonious and ugly. And somebody decides, hey, she's a great goat because everybody hates her and she's got no friends in America. And they'd be horribly wrong about that.
Who has 2 thumbs and is Shireen's friend in America? This guy.
Yeah, I mean, for a while now, I've been saying she could never win because I was like, where are the jury votes? Like, everyone she talks to seems annoyed to her. I am no longer saying that. I agree 100% that she has 4 potential, easy, jury votes if Mike were to enter the jury. If it's a final 3, that's a jury of 8. You just need the other 2 people to split the other 4 and our new Survivor champion is Shireen. I also think she could have a shot at a 5th because just the wisdom of crowds. Shireen, maybe Sierra gets to that jury box early enough that she's hanging out more with those 4 than the other 4.
Haley and Jen are getting her really drunk.
Yeah, and peer pressure does its thing, or she's just pissed that she was voted out before Shireen was, that sort of thing. So I actually think a jury vote could go her way, and this is the first time that I ever thought that. But conversely, I no longer think she's a goat, because I think that even to these morons that would, or at least to enough of these morons, that should become obvious. I feel like, there's probably going to be some cheering for Shireen in the jury box.
Yeah.
So I think at a certain point they'll look over this like, man, this isn't a big stretch. A lot of dumb players have figured out that we can't leave anybody from a previous alliance out there because their alliance is sitting in the jury. Basic math for all them super fans. But yeah, I think weirdly, for Shireen, Dan is the key. One of 2 ways, and I'll expound on that a bit more with mine. So I will explain how Mike could win, and I'll just quickly say, I still think Mike is going to win. Everybody's like, oh, Andy, you're going to eat them words or whatever. It's like, maybe. But last week, I feel like that was an accurate representation of everything we were told about this season. And moreover, I still feel 100% confident and laughing at the idea that Carolyn or Tyler are winning.
Well, for the record, I'm not convinced that Mike is doomed now either. For some reason, I think he's one of the probably 2 strongest candidates to win, maybe 3 strongest candidates to win.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah. It's going to be tough.
Yep.
But, so what needs to happen? Obviously, the simplest is, combination of immunity idols and immunity victories. You're right to be skeptical about immunity runs. The caveat I would add is there's a collection of truly hapless game players going on right now. It's not like he's competing against the best of the best here. He's, Will and Dan and Rodney, who has sucked at everything. Sierra really hasn't stood out. So who's he competing against? And Shireen.
Tyler.
Shireen has not done it. Yeah, so he's competing against Tyler, he's competing against Carolyn. Yeah, okay. Especially if you take one of them out
I'll take
early.
those odds.
Yeah, again, there's so many random challenges that are thrown at it that to evens it up that even somebody could randomly win. That said, if you're a conspiracy theorist, is Survivor going to throw a lot of those when Joe and Mike is on the shopping block? I'm not a conspiracy theorist so much, but I'll say this. I don't think Survivor's above shuffling the deck of a challenge or 2 in order to increase drama. And not even necessarily to benefit one player or another, but just to benefit television. And I'm okay with them doing that.
Yep.
Because it is a television show. So many people get so worked up about what's fair in the game that they forget, they have to produce a television show. And people are like, oh no, game show laws. Survivor's not a game show. It's a special thing. They fought in court to not be held accountable to the exact same rules. If for the only sake is that it is not played in a controlled environment. They sometimes need to move things around because it's frickin' raining that day.
Right.
But, more to that, I still think Dan might be in play. Not because of what I was saying earlier, that he was, sniffing out that Jen could be supplanting him or whatever, yada yada. I think what we saw next week could put him back in play. If he discovers that people are after him or were rooting through his stuff, now that's the latest betrayal for Dan, and he can flip over. And Dan is now 2 votes, not just 1. And maybe he can bring Sierra back with him, because she doesn't want to be 5 of 4. So that could be what keeps both Mike and Shireen in. That the other side overplays their hand, and Dan just comes back into the fold, and that's how it flips. Or Mike wins immunity, and what this has been happening throughout the whole season is every vote has to be a vote split. But now they can't split it between Mike and Shireen. And they're like, okay, well Dan, because, as you say, they found out that he has this advantage. Now he's a big threat. And that gets back to Dan somehow. Either because Sierra is suddenly like, oh, maybe there is this alliance of 4 now that they're throwing Dan under the bus. Or just that everything seems to be getting back to everybody. Like they knew about this vote split. They knew about the other ones. Like there doesn't seem to be a tight lid going on. And again, that could be enough to sow the seeds of discord that flips this back into Mike's favor and Shireen, so they don't have to win everything. And then, as much as I think Shireen has some solid votes, I don't think that's true if she's going up against Mike. It'd be more like, hey, way to go, Shireen. We're so happy to, you're here. Maybe like, Jen and Haley vote for her, but I still think like, well, for one, she wouldn't have Mike's vote, right? And I'd say, Joe is probably still more likely to vote for Mike. So he has to get there, and I think, a combination of the other side screwing up, because come on, people aren't geniuses, bringing Dan back with his, advantage, because, at this point we can't really believe anything Probst said, but he did say that, this thing happens, and something happens. It's not just that Dan sits on it, like most people sit on their idols. If you believe Probst, and I don't know if we should, it'll get played in an interesting way. So I think these are plausible scenarios. So don't give up hope yet, everyone.
All right, but
that said, we gotta predict what's gonna happen next week. Who's going home?
Yes, let's get to some concrete predictions here. Shireen goes home.
I was gonna go that way, but you know what? Screw it. I'm holding out. Rodney. I know they were targeting Carolyn, and it made sense, especially because she's a bigger jury threat, but at this point I'd say Rodney is a bigger social threat to Mike. Are Dan and Sierra going to stick with Tyler and Carolyn? Do they even have a relationship with Tyler and Carolyn? Like Rodney's the one attacking him personally. So if they are able to flip it, either through, the things I suggested with Dan flipping over, or it could just be something as simple as they forget to split the vote and Mike places idol. And, he and Shireen target Rodney. I just think, I think maybe they move off of Carolyn to Rodney because reasons.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously Shireen just because it can't be Mike, and these 6 don't seem to be willing to do anything but that, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and also you're hoping to reverse jinx, right?
That was my goal, yes, but I think you ruined it by saying that I'm reverse jinxing.
My goal is to ruin much of what you do here.
Yes.
You don't just do it here. The
Great
podcast
Andy.
is a primary source of John content. We've been putting out lots on our blog at purplerockpodcast@wordpress.com, which is where you find our blog, not where you send us email. What do we got going on the blog?
We are in the final round of the Ultimate Survivor bracket, and it's Sandra versus Parvati in the final. We've also got a couple recent articles up there. Emma did an all-star jury cast for us. Emma also recapped her date with Max, and also Carolyn, Vince, and Will. And then I wrote something just today that I will cryptically call an ode to Will.
Yes, check it out. And before Emma gets too worked up, it wasn't a date, people. Men and women are allowed to spend time socially with each other without making it icky. Plus, she's super young, and we try not to sexualize it. But yeah, check out our blog. It's a place of action. Things are happening. Our friend Matt wrote something as well that is already expired. And I will post something about the bonus videos because, oh wow, I didn't get enough of watching all this loveliness. I need to watch more segments of these people.
Sure.
Where can people reach us? Because I never seem to know.
You can email us at purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. or you can find us on Twitter. We're at Purple Rock Pod. And Andy, do you want him to contact you on Twitter?
Sure, it's Andy_Sayers. Just, don't DM me while it's on. I watch at different times than the rest of you. I was, semi-spoiled on the outcome of this week, which would normally bother me a bit, except that A, I know I should know better to be anywhere near Twitter. It's just, basketball was on, and I'd like to be around for basketball. And B, I think the episode was made just a little more tolerable when I knew that things were going to work out poorly. I didn't know in exact ways, but I just knew that hope should be abandoned. As
Abandon all hope.
Yeah, there was that. So actually, quick question before we go. Were you surprised? Did you think that finally Evil was going to be punished, or it just never felt that way for you?
No. By the time they got to the vote, I was like, well, we're screwed.
Yeah, it never really, obviously to me it never felt like they'd made the case that Dan, or that was going to happen, but at the same time, I was already getting the vibe from people that this wasn't a fun time episode.
Right.
Alright, so, hopefully this podcast was a fun time episode for everyone.
Smooth, subtle transition again, Andy.
If not, at least there was somewhere you could commiserate, your misery. Anything else, John?
You know what else is smooth and subtle? Our theme music.